You seen Prabhat ji on the screen?
Yeah. So I think now they've allowed that permission. So I would start on the talk. So thank you very much for joining. This is a slightly very interesting day today with 8th Bihar Science Conference, and I'm very excited about this talk for some reason that I will tell you at the end. I wanted to share the progress of nuclear fusion in India. That's why I've titled it Past, Present, and Future. But before I start that, let me first introduce nuclear fusion to many people who may not be familiar. Can you see the change in the slide?
Yes,
sir.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
So what you are seeing is a story that we have heard, that Hanumanji, when he was playing as a child, he thought that sun was a ball, and then he wanted to catch that ball to play with it. So that is something that is there in our mind. Can we play with the sun? So the aim of nuclear fusion is that we want to put the sun into a box to generate energy. And this idea has been around for the last 70 years. The problem is that we don't know how to build this box. That is the issue that we are going to discuss today, how to build this box. A very interesting year was year 1920, which is about 100 years, exactly 100 years ago, where Meghnad Saha announced his Saha ionization equation, which is considered to be the start of plasma physics in some sense. And the same year, Arthur Eddington announced that nuclear fusion process takes place inside the sun. So 100 years ago was a very phenomenal situation where plasma physics started, and we identified the nuclear fusion process taking place inside the stars and the sun. So if I look at nuclear word, in the popular mind, what comes into the mind is fission, the atomic power. We always talk about nuclear power, we talk about fission. Fusion is not something talked about because we are not producing it commercially. I'm fortunate that just before this event, we had the inaugural event. Dr. Anil Kakotkar was there, very famous nuclear scientist. I had the opportunity to work with him for 5 years from 2013 to 2018 in Delhi at TIFAC. The nuclear fusion process can also release energy. Nuclear fission process can also release energy. That's very surprising. In fission, you're breaking the nuclei. In fusion, you're combining them. How is it that once you break, also you get energy? When you combine, then also get energy. It's related to the binding energy. I'll not go into details, but lighter elements, when you fuse them, you get energy. Heavier elements, when you break them, you get energy. Some of you are experts of nuclear fission, and some are experts of nuclear fusion. And so typically, we talk about hydrogen and hydrogen isotopes as the way to produce nuclear fusion energy. Now, what is the most suitable reaction on the Earth? Inside the sun, when the temperature is very, very high, of course, the hydrogen and hydrogen fusion takes place. It's a very slow process. On the Earth, when we want to do either deuterium-deuterium or deuterium-tritium, reaction has much higher reaction rate. So that is, a DT plasma is considered a suitable candidate for fusion reactor. The kind of temperatures that we require are 100 to 200 million degrees centigrade. Tritium is radioactive with a half-life of 12.3 years. It is not easily accessible, but it can be bred from lithium. And actually, in this process, what we find is that we use deuterium as a fuel. Tritium is recycled. So it is not necessary that you have to have a lot of stock of tritium. And so deuterium-tritium reaction is what is considered a suitable candidate. But I'll come back to this point later on again. So basically, you use deuterium-tritium as the fuel to start with. What we produce is helium and neutron. Neutrons carry 14.1 MeV. And this is typically captured in a blanket, something like lithium blanket, which again produces tritium back and produces helium. So final effect that we have is that we are producing helium out of this and neutrons which are captured in lithium blanket. and the energy of neutron is heating the lithium blanket, and then once it is there, then through heat transfer, we boil the water and use normal steam turbine to produce energy. That is how the fusion energy is expected to produce. The fuel is deuterium and ash and lithium to some extent. Just to give an idea of what is the amount needed. So look at the top here. If you take 10,000 tons of coal, only 800 grams of deuterium tritium is equivalent to 10,000 tons of coal. So you can imagine a very small amount of deuterium tritium is equivalent to 10,000 tons of coal. Deuterium is contained in water to the extent of 0.015%, and tritium has to be generated in situ, so it gets reused. If I take one bathtub of water and a typical lithium that is available in a battery, we can produce energy for 50 years for an average family. That's the kind of promise that it has. Now, one of the problems that I mentioned is that the temperatures that we need to produce are 100 to 200 million degrees centigrade, which is 10 crore to 20 crore degrees centigrade. You have to keep this plasma, as we call it, at a very hot temperature in a confined volume. Inside the sun or the stars is a gravitational confinement that takes place. On the earth, that is not possible. So typically, we look at two approaches. One is called magnetic confinement, and the other is called inertial confinement. I will not talk more about inertial confinement. I will focus more on magnetic confinement, which seems to be the preferred route today and something that I have worked. The magnetic confinement fusion, also there are many concepts within that. There's a linear confinement process that is called magnetic mirror concept. And there's a toroidal confinement. The toroidal confinement, you have something like a torus. In US, we call it donut. In India, we can use something like jalebi, not jalebi, I would say, bada kind of thing. In the toroidal confinement, there are two devices that have been popular. One is called accelerator, and one is called tokamak. But in both of these, we need to have magnetic fields that twist helically, that is needed to confine plasma inside this vessel, which is at very high temperatures. We have to make sure that no part of the plasma touches the vacuum vessel. So we use a magnetic field trap to trap the plasma that we create. I'm not going into too much technical detail. If I look at the two devices, the tokamak and the accelerator was the one that was preferred in 1950s. In this case, you generate the magnetic field completely by magnetic field coils, but the geometry is very complex. The magnetic field configuration, magnetic field coils are very complex. The tokamak concept, part of the magnetic field is produced by the magnet coils, and part it is produced by driving a plasma current inside. So plasma current itself produces a magnetic field. The combination of the toroidal magnetic field produced by external magnetic coils and the plasma current confines the plasma. That is the basic concept between these two. In 1950s in Russia, the work started on this particular concept called tokamak, which is a Russian abbreviation. In a simpler form, you can call toroidal magnetic chamber. They built a tokamak called T1, and then T2 and T3. The T3 was the one which gave very good results, and that's how it became famous worldwide in 1960s. And many labs which are working on accelerators converted very quickly into tokamaks. So in tokamak, the concept is very simple. You have coils which can be arranged nicely in a toroidal form, and you have plasma current which is generating a magnetic field. The combination of these two works. This is an example of a tokamak in Germany. Now, when you drive the plasma current by transformer action, that is called ohmic heating. So as the plasma current is being driven, just like when you drive current through any resistance, it heats up that resistor. Similarly, it heats up the plasma. But as plasma heats up, it also starts to radiate energy. So at some stage, the amount of heating that is being done and the amount of energy that is going out becomes equal. You can't heat it further. So to take the plasma to higher temperatures, we typically use external heating mechanism. One is called radio frequency heating, other is called neutral beam injection heating. These are the two methods to heat up the plasma. Just to tell you that we have achieved already 100 million degrees centigrade, 10 crore degrees centigrade. Inside the core of the sun is about 1.5 crore degrees centigrade. So even more than 6 times we've already achieved on Earth, more than the hottest part of the sun, 1.5 crore degrees centigrade. We have already achieved over 10 crore, 100 million degree Kelvin. And we believe that we can easily also achieve up to 150, 200 million degree Kelvin shortly. So this tokamak T1 was the first one that was built in 1950s in Russia. Since then, there have been large number of devices built with various capabilities, various experiments have been done. I don't want to go in detail, just to give you an idea that all kind of devices with various experiments that have been done over last, if I take now about more than 50 years now. You can see some sizes here. The one on the right-hand side top is ITER project. ITER project is being built in south of France in Cadarache. This is the international project, the largest science project ever done on Earth. This requires effort of different countries. So India is a member of this. US is a member, Japan is a member, Europe is a member, Russia is a member, China is a member. So all countries have come together to build this device. India is also a key contributor to this. In fact, the cryogenic vessel that has been built for this was built in India. And this ITER is in progress. It was conceptualized initially in 1985, but because of global politics, geopolitics and so on, many things got delayed. Finally, in 2007, the work started. The construction is going on. It is expected by 2025, the machine will be assembled and ready for operation, 2025. So there is a lot of delay. It's a huge device. Now, we nuclear fusion scientists are always blamed that we keep promising that nuclear fusion will be available to us as energy source, and it will be available in 20 years. But the 20 years keep shifting all the time, and we never have nuclear fusion energy. But just to put things in perspective, this curve actually shows you the Moore's law that all of us have heard, that how electronics industry has developed, chips have developed, processors have developed, and the computers have moved ahead. The blue curve here is showing the nuclear fusion energy, something called a fusion figure of merit, a triple product, which is a product of confinement time, density, and the temperature. And in parallel, you can see the Moore's law. So similar to progress that has happened in semiconductor industry has happened in nuclear fusion, and we're expecting this to now be with us very soon. Personally, I went to US in 1981 to do my PhD at University of California, Berkeley. That was ranked #1 in physics at that time. I've written a number of blogs recently, and one of them talks about how I got into nuclear fusion research. I'm not going to describe that here. Those of you who are interested, you can read about it. My PhD work was actually combining a linear mirror device with toroidal device, like a stellator, and that I had called helically linked mirror arrangement. I don't have time to go into details of these, but this is one of the figures that is being shown. It was not possible to manufacture this device at that time in 1985-86 when I designed this, but today it looks like it may be possible because of advancement in technology. I finished my PhD in 1986 in US and immediately came back to India. Luckily, when I finished my PhD, around that time, the Indian nuclear fusion efforts had started. So early 1980s, plans for nuclear fusion research started in India. There were 2 centers that started working on this. One was set up exclusively for this purpose, called Institute for Plasma Research at Gandhinagar in Gujarat, and a plasma physics, hot plasma physics project in Saha Institute of Nuclear Physics, Tokamak, Saha Institute of Nuclear Physics, Saha Institute of Nuclear Physics in Calcutta. And as I mentioned in the beginning, Meghna Saha was one of the key person who started the plasma physics 100 years, which was very interesting to see that this work was started at Science Institute of Nuclear Physics. Just to remind some of you, in 1945, the first cyclotron in Asia was set up in Science Institute of Nuclear Physics. So, Department of Atomic Energy funded the Science Institute of Nuclear Physics program, and Department of Science and Technology funded the Institute for Plasma Research project. The Institute of Plasma Research was set up as a whole institute for this purpose. So that is the main nuclear fusion center in India, actually. And through that only we are participating in ITER project as well. The Science Institute of Nuclear Physics, tokamak, was a smaller device with a major radius of 30 centimeters only. It had a 2 Tesla magnetic field and 75 kiloampere of plasma current and only about 20 to 30 millisecond duration. I'm not going to more details. This became operational in 1987. It was actually fabricated by Toshiba according to the design that was provided by Science Institute of Nuclear Physics. And I was there from 1986. So when this device came, I was there very much. And I was involved with that device from day one. So 1986, I joined Science Institute. 1987, this device came. So I was involved with that from beginning. On the other hand, in Institute of Plasma Research, an Aditya tokamak, Aditya, as you know, there is the name of the sun, was started. This became operational in 1989. Large part of this was indigenous. The power supply part was actually built in Germany by ABB. But large parts of this was indigenous effort, both the design part as well as manufacturing part, fabrication part was done by many Indian industry. What you see on the left side pictures, the top one is Science Institute of Nuclear Physics tokamak, and the bottom one is Aditya tokamak at Institute of Plasma Research. I was lucky to have worked for 9 years at Science Institute of Nuclear Physics from 1986 to 95 and 95 to 2002 at Institute of Plasma Research. I was involved with both the places. This is again a larger picture of Science Institute of Nuclear Physics, Calcutta tokamak. I'm not going to go into more details, but I was a modeling person. I was working on the fastest computer of the world in US. When I came back to India and Calcutta, I was the only one with knowledge of computers at that time. I had the personal computer with me. In fact, the institute itself did not have a personal computer. So I also started to develop data acquisition system. And the Japanese had brought everything with them, even a screwdriver, to assemble the system. But there was some issue with the measurements, and they tried out my data acquisition system and allowed my data acquisition system to be connected to the device. So I've written this blog, how Japanese got hooked on to Indian technology. And then when I was doing a modeling, I found that there was impurities that were there inside. So to develop that system to clean the machine, I became an experimentalist. I became an accidental experimentalist. There's a blog I've written on this. Very interesting one, because I could do this in a very different way than was done anywhere in the world. At Calcutta, actually, I could improve the machine to international levels of performance. Then I was invited to shift to Gandhinagar to work on a superconducting tokamak project, which I was planning in Calcutta. So around 92, 93, I was planning that, and Institute of Plasma Research got a go-ahead in 1994 for 2 superconducting machines. One was called SST-1 and second was SST-2, which was also nicknamed Demo, at a budget of about 800 crores. So I was requested to shift to Gandhinagar to participate in a superconducting machine project, SST-1. When I moved there, Professor Kaur was the director of the institute, told me to spend time on Aditya tokamak. So 89 Aditya started to work, but it was not working at the full function, full parameters. Very small discharges were coming. It was crashing at the rising phase of the plasma current. I've written blogs about how in 5 days I could actually get the reactor, the Aditya tokamak, to work. And then I was made the project leader of Aditya tokamak. We faced many problems. I've written those out in blogs. Rural technology, which I come from Bihar, and my village in Darbhanga, I had seen how hand pumps were being installed. And I used that to actually solve a major problem that was affecting 80% discharges were not happening because of grounding problem. And I could solve that problem by what I had seen in my village in Darbhanga. This is the Rural Technology Health Fusion Reactor. There is a blog on that. Then at some time, a coil that is inside the machine failed, its insulation failed. A photograph that I saw brought that back from death. Using Tata pickup truck brake shoes, I made a system that could take out that coil very easily. Again, there's a blog written on that. I'm not going to go in details. There are similarly other blogs that are written on this mystery of error fields, dancing sparks in tokamak, and how there was explosion and coils broke up from the support, and how we solved the problem and found out the issues. There were a number of such issues that were there. None of these we can publish. So when people talk about publication, and Dr. Kakutra was just now talking about this, some of this cannot be published simply, but you have to do it. You have to work on this system to make sure that your goal of achieving nuclear fusion happens. Then after 25 years, Aditya, it was upgraded into Aditya Upgrade recently. And this is functional from January 2017. So Aditya was dismantled in 2015, and now it's been reassembled in a new configuration. Things have been changed to carry out diverter-based experiment. I'm not going to go into details. In 1990, around mid-90s, the focus moved to very long discharges. Tokamak is actually a pulsed machine, so the idea was to actually can we sustain the plasma for a long time. So at that time, 4 machines were planned: SST-1 in India, East in China, K-Star in Korea, and JT60SA in Japan. JT60SA was actually an upgrade of JT60. So out of these 3 are functional right now. The Japanese one has just been assembled this year. So I'll just compare the performance of those 3. So this is SST-1 tokamak that is functional in IPR. There is a table here comparing these 3 machines: SST-1 in India, East in China, and K-Star in Korea. The major radius of SST-1 is 1.1 meter as compared to 1.85 and 1.8 for the other one. Minor radius is also smaller of SST-1 compared to others. SST-1 actually got assembled around 2005, 2006, but there were problems. It had to be brought apart again and reassembled in 2013 when it started to function in a better way. East started to function in 2006 and K started in 2007. So they actually stuck to their time schedule. We had delays because of certain technical problems. The plasma current that I achieved in SST-1 is about 100 kiloamperes compared to 200 kiloamperes. That is planned. 1 megaampere is the plan of East China. It has been achieved. 2 megaamperes is the plan of Korea, where 350 kiloamperes has been achieved. In terms of time duration, SST-1 is planned for 1,000 seconds. We have not yet crossed 1 second. In East, they have crossed 100 seconds, 102 seconds out of 1,000 seconds that they planned. In K-Star, they have crossed 72 seconds out of 300 they have planned. In terms of toroidal field, in SST-1, we have achieved half of the toroidal field so far, 1.5 out of 3. The East and the K-Star, they have achieved their full toroidal fields. The temperature of SST-1 that is quoted is about 2 million degree Kelvin as compared to 10 that is planned. East and K-Star both have achieved 100 million, and they set the world records. East did it first about 2 to 3 years ago, and K-Star has done it more recently of 100 million. So both of these, East and K-Star, has done world record temperatures. So you can see the comparison between these 3. It shows the progress very clearly of how India has fared in this. We have to still a long way to go. India is also planning SST-2, slightly bigger than JET. JET is something that is functional in Kallam in UK. You can see roughly the dimensions of JET. This is the JT60SA. This has been just assembled in Japan. ITER project that is going on, which will happen in 2025, and demo that is planned as an international cooperation. This is going to actually produce commercial nuclear fusion power. ITER is going to produce 500 megawatt of nuclear fusion power if we give 50 megawatt power, and India is planning SST-2. But right now, timelines are not clear to me. In the meantime, a lot of technological advancements have happened. There are four that I will list, but there are many more. One is high temperature superconductors. Second is advanced manufacturing, such as additive manufacturing. Third is extremely high power superconducting computing based models. For example, when I was doing my PhD, I was using the fastest supercomputers of the world at that time, but those are almost like a baby or even in much smaller than computer supercomputers that we have today. Even artificial intelligence based algorithms are playing a very important role in this. So high temperature superconductors have started to be used now in tokamaks. They can continue to function at higher temperatures. That means you don't have to cool it down to liquid helium and so on. And the magnetic field strengths have also grown. So we are actually able to produce, for example, MIT in US has a spin-off called Commonwealth Fusion Systems. It's a private company supported by MIT, which has planned out a reactor called ARC, affordable, robust, and compact, which will perform similar to ITER project, but roughly 1/10 of the volume. It doubles the magnetic field strength to about 23 Tesla at the coil, compared to 13 Tesla in ITER, but in the center of the plasma, it will be less. The potential power that can be extracted from reactor is power 4 of the magnetic field. So if you double the magnetic field, it goes 2 to the power 4 in terms of the power. So actually, same power can be achieved in a much smaller volume. It also means that it takes much lower cost and much less time to design and construct. So this is the advancement that is happening, that is bringing hope to us of achieving nuclear fusion in much shorter time scale. So one of the projects that Commonwealth Fusion System is working on is called SPARC, which is the smallest possible arc. They're using high temperature superconducting magnets, molten salt liquid blanket, and so on. They planned out in 2018 that 3 years they will spend in developing the magnets and making sure that they can do that part, developing and testing large bore high temperature superconducting magnets, SGS magnets. And after they've demonstrated this, they will start the machine constructor to complete in 4 years in 2025. And early 2013, they plan to build this arc at about cost of $2 billion as compared to ITER, which has gone to about $65 billion. Lockheed Martin has another concept where they had actually planned out something that can produce 100 megawatt power in truck-sized device. Wendelstein 7X accelerator in Germany, which is a very complex device, has also started functioning. It has certain advantages over tokamak. It's a continuous device. I'm not going to go into details of these. But another interesting thing that is happening is that I mentioned about DT reaction. Can we have there's a noise, can we mute please? Can we please mute the mic? In addition to DT reaction, which produces neutrons, some of the neutrons do not get captured, they go and strike the structures. So structures can become lightly radioactive. That's one of the problems that is there. Of course, work is going on. No, radioactive effort going on around the globe on what we call aneutronic fusion. There are a number of reactions that are possible. I again don't have time to go into details of these. But Dr. Deepak is here from TAE Technology. TAE is working on one such things. They have seen a lot of progress recently. Again, I don't have time to go into details, but Copernicus is a machine that they are building now, which is expected to produce fusion power. An interesting thing was that with the development of AI-based algorithm provided by Google, TAE Technology found net plasma heating using the AI algorithm. And that was a momentous occasion when human operators could not find this, but AI system found this. And that's why I was talking about how AI is helping in nuclear fusion. So Google is participating. Very interesting thing that has happened is that investment in privately funded fusion ventures has grown. For example, I have a list of companies here. The TAE Technology was set up in 1998, but even 1974, the first nuclear fusion private industry was set up. And you can see that $200 to $300 million have been invested in these companies. Surprisingly, even Ambanis have invested in this through a common company called Breakthrough Ventures, where Bill Gates is there and so on, and they've invested in US. So this is happening. But in addition to producing nuclear, using nuclear fusion for energy production, It is also revolutionizing medical isotope production. It is also possible that we can use this to do space missions where it can be used for propulsion and so on. So fusion can enable really interesting robotic and human missions to Mars and Pluto. It is also potentially a way of getting into interstellar space. I have been promoting asteroid mining, and we hope that this will be helpful in that. So with this, I'm coming to the end of this, a very important announcement that we would like to make. And I would actually share a video of Dr. Akash Singh after this. I have just now nicknamed this project Sanlayan. Sanlayan stands for fusion in Sanskrit. Nuclear fusion is called Nabikiya Sanlayan in Hindi. This is the first, it's a private initiative to develop nuclear fusion technology in India. No such initiative has taken place. In fact, in such a initiative so far in India, so it's a momentous occasion to announce this project Sanlayan. This will be supported by international investors. And today, this is the first announcement that I'm making in Bihar Science Conference. I've not made this anywhere. This is going to develop nuclear fusion technology in India at 115 to 120 the cost of development of similar things in Western countries. And we hope that we'll be able to provide clean and long-term energy solution to also develop medical isotopes. This is something that can be done much faster, and in long-term also work on space propulsion. I will share a video of Dr. Akash Singh. I'll just introduce him. Dr. Akash Singh is an entrepreneur and runs companies in the area of biotech, medical devices, engineering space. Some of his associates are present in this meeting right now. They have been exclusively put on this project. Manoj Srivastav, Dr. Akhil, all of them are part of this. Dr. Akash Singh authored 400 peer-reviewed journals, he has a number of books, and he has received a number of honors for his work. I will play the video after I finish my talk here. But within India also, government is supporting space technology. For example, this announcement of Anant Technology becoming the first Indian firm to tap global space market, forms joint venture with US firm Saturn Satellites. And there are 4 more companies that have come up. Government of India has set up a separate entity to support private industry in space. I'll also like to share that UK, for example, has unveiled a 10-point green plan to support nuclear fusion in the country. They've even asked societies, communities to share areas where government can set up nuclear fusion plants by 2040. So they're already moving ahead. So to end the talk, nuclear fusion has made progress along the line of progress that we have seen in electronics and computer sector. It's not recognized as much. Private investment is growing around the globe in spite of uncertainty in cost of developing nuclear fusion technology. India can develop technology at 115 to 120 the cost compared to Western countries like we have done in IT sector. Just we need to have proper partnership. This is a momentous occasion for a private initiative in nuclear fusion in India. Let me stop at this and play a video of Dr. Akash Singh, just a short video where he's making an announcement of this particular venture. Let me share that video. I hope you'll be able to hear his voice.
Great privilege that we started working with Professor Prabhat, and along with my team, we have been working on planning for nuclear fusion, and our objective is to start nuclear fusion plant in India early 2021. And our objective is to create a clean energy, which is highly useful for, especially for citizens of India as well as around the world. And we want to show that we have pioneered the nuclear fusion. To create these great projects that we envision. Thank you all.
There's echo. Yeah, any questions? I don't know if you could hear the Akash's video, but he said that early 2021 we'll start on this project. I have Dr. Manoj Srivastava with me, who is representing the company in India, and Akhil was also there. He's in US, so the team has been formed, and I would be advising this project, and we are making out the plan right now as to what we are going to do. So this is the announcement that Dr. Akash Singh has made, and if there are any questions, then I will try to answer.
कुछ वीडियो प्ले हो रहा है क्या? हाँ, ये आपका दिख रहा है। नहीं, मेरा दिख रहा है। उधर से कोई आकाश सिंह कोई बोले हैं वीडियो प्ले करने, तो कर रहे हैं क्या?
वो प्ले हो गया था, ये छोड़ दीजिए, नहीं हुआ है तो कोई बात नहीं है।
क्या मुझे वोट ऑफ थैंक्स करना है?
साउंड का सिस्टम छोटा लगा देगा ना, आवाज देगा।
Is there any time for question answers or we stop?
Do I have to give vote of thanks?
I wanted to know if there's a question time for question answer or we stop.
This is Santosh here.
Mr. Malik wants to ask a question.
Yeah, Prabhatji, I just wanted to know this private initiative which you talked about, is it for developing here or start a commercial kind of venture here in India? Is it, or is it for the development that they want?
It is R&D work towards the commercial realization. So it is a technology development. It is not something that is being imported. This will be developing the technology in India.
Yeah, but they have figured out the locations where they would be doing it?
No, those details are not there. I'm the one who is advising. So right now, all the details have not been worked out.
Right, that's good.
I will start it in my university. The early phase will start in the university, in my university, and then slowly as we plan out things, then we'll decide other things.
Okay, you could start on the eastern side also, like Patna or Calcutta or things like that, you see.
Yeah, well, right now it's virtual world, so we can work.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? If not, we can stop the session now and we can close it. Is there any announcement for closing the session?
First of all, excellent presentation.
Sure.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, excellent presentation. Thank you for giving so nice overview about international and the effort which India is putting in. I know India is a part of the program, which is very important for our country, and also now seeing and listening from you that a private initiative has been taking place. That's what I think what we heard in Professor Kogatnam talk, and I think this is very important step for India. So that there are investors and there are people like you who are interested in starting a private initiative. I think it's very important for the youth of India who is now entering into this international areas where there is an interest to bring the academics and the knowledge to the market. I think this is a very good step in that direction. Thank you for
thank you, Deepak, for joining from California at late night. And you are in the private fusion industry, so your help will be very much appreciated.
So, Prabhat, a minor correction I would like to make in one of your slides. you mentioned TE Technologies, and you mentioned in one of your slides that we have raised $40 million. The minor correction is that we have actually raised $750 million, and we are the largest company in the world on fusion side.
That's not a minor correction, that's a huge correction. I must have got the figure wrong somewhere, maybe recently. Thank you for that correction. Naren Pandey, you have raised your hand. Do you want to ask some question?
Sir, I have one question.
Yeah, please, Dr. Anandutta.
So, other than the direct implications of this technology, are there any implications in biological research?
The medical isotope part is something that may be of interest to biological research, but I am not in a position to answer. Maybe we can discuss and try to think of how it could influence in biological research. But medical isotope is something where, of course, this is going to influence diagnostics very much.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Okay, then let's stop.
Dr. I have.
Yeah, Dr. Naidu, please go ahead.
Yes, I have one question. So I think artificial intelligence has been revolutionizing several fields, including, for example, like there has been a recent breakthrough in like protein folding and things like that. So what kind of challenges do you anticipate that artificial intelligence can tackle related to nuclear fusion? Like, you might have like known about like a lot of these challenges, but like what are the things that might be amenable to tackle from using artificial intelligence?
So basically, with thousands of parameters that go into control, defining the machine performance, and with a huge amount of data that is available, simply it's not humanly possible. Even when in 1990s, when we used to produce a lot of data, it was, of course, much smaller volume of data compared to what we have now. But 90% of the data nobody looked at. It was simply not possible, even at that time.
Gotcha.
So today, with the machines growing, the data volume is tremendous. So for somebody to go through all of that is, impossible, humanly impossible. That's where the AI is coming in a big way. And, Google, that's how Google has been contributing. And Deepak is sitting here actually, who is part of the company TE Technology, where they've tried out that particular algorithm to a good success. So, it's I cannot tell you exactly how it is. One has to get involved and look at the data. But it's basically coming up with new scenarios, new possibilities which are not possible, humanly to discover. Just like drug discovery.
Gotcha. Thank you, Dr. Achin.
Any other questions or comments?
आवाज नहीं आ रहा है।
Stop the session.
The talk is over. Prabhat Anjan ji.
Malik, any question you want to ask?
There is just a comment on that biological thing. I think the one which you proposed is also, production of molybdenum, which is very much wanted. And I can foresee that if you can have that, you can have one in Patna, one in Darbhanga, and all over the place, you see. It is going to be a real great work, actually, if we can do that. The molybdenum part.
I know your interest in that, and you've been working on this for several years now. So we can join hands. That's why I've invited you to participate. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
So I would like to thank all of you for joining from different places in the world. And I hope that some of you would be part of this venture that we are trying. It's a momentous occasion for Indian science of private investment in areas of nuclear fusion, which is very uncertain. And thanks so much. Dr. Kakurkar just now gave a talk in the inaugural address. He talked about this aspect of private R&D. And so I hope that we should be able to see this change. And actually, what I'm expecting is that more such partnership between international investors and Indian private R&D industry would come up, just like it has happened in software industry, and that can change the country and the world. Thank you so much.
प्रभात रंजन जी, विभूति here from the Patna Science College. Now, Professor Santosh Kumar will give you vote of thanks for this presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Am I audible?
to all?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay. So I take it as my privilege to get an opportunity to propose vote of thanks in a session whose keynote speaker was Professor Prabhat Ranjan. I always tell that Professor Prabhat Ranjan is a synonym of innovation and innovative ideas. We all know that Professor Prabhat Ranjan is presently VC of D.Y. Patil International University, Pune, and he was former executive director of TIFAC, New Delhi. He has been alumni of IIT Kharagpur, University of Delhi, University of California, Berkeley, and IPR Gandhinagar. His interest was in astrophysics, relativity, particle physics, and diverse many field of science like from cosmos to earth to body to mind, and so many fields are there. And it ultimately culminated into the area of nuclear fusion, in which he has done great job for this country and for entire world. So we are all obliged, and especially on behalf of the society and on behalf of the entire scientific community of Bihar, I express my gratitude to Professor Prabhat Ranjan to be kind enough to deliver his keynote address on nuclear fusion in this 8th Bihar Science Conference. Thank you all for being in this session.
Thank you so much.
Sir, pranam.
Pranam.
स्टॉप कर दे सर।